The governor of Judea, Pontius Pilate, penned an extraordinarily detailed letter to Emperor Tiberius in Rome, chronicling everything about Jesus. This letter captured the miracles performed by Jesus and his condemnation and crucifixion. Over 2,000 years ago, Pilate sentenced Jesus to death. Could this reference from Pilate be evidence of Jesus' crucifixion? As the Son of God was sent to die for humanity's sins, billions of people worldwide hold the belief that Jesus is the Son of God, a fundamental tenet for many Christians. But what if this belief were proven untrue? A recently uncovered letter from Pilate to Emperor Tiberius reveals shocking details that could change many minds. The truth within this letter shakes the very foundation of what you may have always believed. Join us as we delve into this disturbing letter, examine its contents, and explore the implications for the Christian faith stemming from Pilate's encounter with Jesus. To grasp the significance of Pilate's revelation, we must journey back in time to uncover his influence and the pivotal role he played in the trial of Jesus. Pontius Pilate was the first Roman governor of Judea, appointed by the Roman Emperor Tiberius. This is a replica of a stone that contains our only inscriptional evidence for Pontius Pilate. And what's really interesting about it is that here is Antiochus Pilatus, which is clearly a reference to Pontius Pilate. His job was to oversee the Judean region, and he did this between 26 and 36 AD. He is infamously remembered as the man who finally sentenced Jesus Christ to be crucified. This singular act earned his name an entry into the Nicene and the Apostles' Creeds. According to the Gospel accounts in the Bible, Pilate was not so eager to sentence Jesus to be crucified as he believed he was a just man who had done no wrong, which was contrary to what the Jews were accusing him of. It might have been this reluctance to judge Jesus that led him to become a Christian, according to Ethiopian Christian tradition. The Coptic Church also believes that the governor became a Christian later in life and even went ahead to honor him as a saint and martyr, where he is celebrated on the 19th or 25th of June. Why did Pilate still sentence Jesus to death, even though he was reluctant? Keep watching as we reveal the political tension of those days that pushed the hands of the Roman governor. Before Pilate came into contact with Jesus, Jesus was first taken to the Caiaphas, who was the high priest installed by the Roman government. The Jews were not pleased with the arrangement, whereby the Roman government could determine and choose who would be the high priest, but they could not do anything about it. Even Caiaphas wasn't happy with the arrangement, as he still showed honor and loyalty to the deposed high priest Annas, who was also his father-in-law. It was Annas who sent Jesus to Caiaphas in the first place. During the trial of Jesus before Caiaphas, there were lots of religious leaders gathered in the space. The Sanhedrin was in full attendance, which was made up of 70 members of the Pharisees, Sadducees, and priests. The objective of this gathering was simple. They wanted to find evidence, even if it was false evidence, to convict Jesus of transgression fit for crucifixion. Almost throughout the night, they could not find any evidence until two men came with the accusation that Jesus threatened to destroy the Jewish temple and then rebuild it in 3 days. Although Jesus did say, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up," he wasn't talking about the Jewish temple, but his body, as he was prophesying about his death and resurrection. The listeners did not understand this, and they were angry with this statement of his, as they wondered how he would be able to rebuild a temple in 3 days that took 46 years to build. When the religious leaders heard this accusation against Jesus, the air was filled with anger as they began to seek his crucifixion, believing they had found the evidence they needed. In the midst of this palpable tension, Caiaphas went ahead to directly ask Jesus if he was the Son of God, as people have reported him to have said. At this point, Jesus answered by saying, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." Immediately after Caiaphas heard this, he tore his clothes and condemned Jesus to death for blasphemy, which is acting or speaking like God, or in a manner that disrespects God. Jesus' claim to be the Son of God was regarded as an insult to God, whom the Jews believed to have no son. Therefore, such a statement was purely disrespectful to God. At this point, They could no longer hold back but began to physically assault Jesus, beating and spitting on him. Why were the religious leaders so angry at Jesus and wanted him dead? For starters, Jesus was not submissive to their authority, and he challenged the authority openly because he considered them hypocrites because of how they demanded that people follow the laws of Moses, whereas they did not do the same. Moreover, Jesus always seemed to work on the Sabbath by healing people and performing acts of kindness, which these leaders believed was contrary to the Jewish laws. All of Jesus' actions were making him more popular, and the people were beginning to undermine their authority because of Jesus' words and actions. So they were scared that they would lose their prominence, relevance, and social status if Jesus was left to continue his preachings, teachings, and healings. They were equally not happy with the kind of people Jesus kept company with, such as tax collectors and prostitutes. According to them, despite the fact that Jesus claimed to be a righteous man and a rabbi, he was not supposed to be hanging around such sinners and morally impure individuals. Furthermore, they refuted and refused to accept Jesus' claim to be the Son of God and the Messiah, as foretold by the old prophets. All of these were the grievances they had about Jesus that drove them to see him dead. However, they did not have the right to execute a man. That right strictly belonged to the Roman governor, who was Pontius Pilate at the time. They decided to change the accusation they had in order to secure a favorable verdict, knowing that the Roman Empire was not interested in their religious laws. So when they came before the great governor of Judea, Pontius Pilate, they accused Jesus of something else rather than blasphemy. They claimed that Jesus was instigating the people to stop paying their taxes to the Roman Emperor Caesar. Apart from this accusation, they also accused him of proclaiming himself a king by calling himself Christ. Despite these claims, Jesus didn't instigate people to stop paying taxes. After all, he himself paid taxes when he was asked to. When Pilate met with Jesus, based on the accusations they had brought before him, he asked Jesus if he was the king of the Jews. At this point, unlike when he was before the Sanhedrin, Jesus chose to stay quiet. Strangely, Pilate considered Jesus innocent even though he had not defended himself, and the governor made this known to the Jews. As they continued to clamor for judgment, Pilate thought of how to free himself from the whole debacle and sent Jesus to Herod Antipas, since Jesus was from the Galilean region. While Herod Antipas was called king, he didn't have much authority like his father Herod the Great did, as the Romans had further clamped down on the Jewish royalty's power and influence. When Jesus was brought before Herod, the king was so happy to meet him because he had heard a lot about Jesus and wished to meet him for a while. Although the king tried everything to get Jesus to talk, he chose to remain silent the same way he did before Pilate, which further frustrated Herod. The king and his court chose to make a mockery of Jesus, since they couldn't get him to talk. He asked his soldiers to drape Jesus with fancy clothes, and then went ahead to say he looked like the king he proclaimed to be. This mockery was Herod's simple-minded way of displaying that he was a better king than Jesus. Seeing a political opportunity to get on good terms with Pontius Pilate, whom he had a sour relationship with, the king sent Jesus back to Pilate, deferring judgment to him since he had the authority. The political state of the Judean region was one of unrest, as Jewish zealots had risen severally to try to violently drive the Romans out of the territory, but they failed every time they tried. When Jesus was brought back to Pilate with the people still demanding his crucifixion, Pilate knew he was in a terrible fix, as the situation could escalate into a riot. It got more mysterious when his wife told him of a strange dream she had that revealed Jesus' innocence, and that the governor shouldn't heed the demands of the Jews, yet he was not willing to give the crucifixion order just like that. So he brought up the custom of pardoning a prisoner every Passover festival since it was Passover. His intention was to present a well-known criminal whom the Jews themselves hated as one option and Jesus as the other option. He felt that Jesus had not committed the sort of atrocities, such as rebellion and murder, Barabbas had committed, so the choice would be easy. He was in for a shock when the people demanded that he release Barabbas and crucify Jesus. The more Pilate tried to get the Jews to let Jesus go, the louder they cried for his crucifixion. To avoid a riot and maybe even a full-blown rebellion against the Roman Empire under his watch, Pilate had to concede to their demands, but not after washing his hands in public, showing that he had nothing to do with the death of a righteous man. After that, he released Barabbas and handed Jesus over to the Jews for crucifixion. While Pilate was reluctant to condemn Jesus, his letters to Emperor Tiberius reveal some disturbing facts about the man he so desperately tried to save from death. The next chapter has the full details. Pilate's disturbing letter. The Pilate stone, also known as the Pilate inscription, was discovered in 1961 during excavations at Caesarea Maritima on the coast of Israel. A mysterious letter from Pilate to the Roman Emperor Tiberius about the details surrounding Jesus has been discovered. In fact, this letter forms part of what is known as the Pilate cycle, which is a collection of early Christian writings that are attributed to Pontius Pilate or describe his actions, especially those that have to do with the trial of Jesus. The letter that reveals disturbing facts about Jesus is known as the Acts of Pilate. The accounts of Pilate in this writing portray Jesus as an ordinary man, and more so, as a common criminal without special power or authority. It included a list of the charges that were brought against Jesus and the trial details. This letter seems to disprove some fundamental Christian beliefs. A prominent one that this alleged letter seems to challenge is Jesus' claim to be the Son of God. Christians all over the world believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and it is central to their faith. They believe he was born of virgin birth by Mary and is fully God in human form, and his coming to the earth was to bring salvation for all of humanity through his death, burial, resurrection, and ascension. Yet this belief is strongly challenged by the content of Pilate's letters. Furthermore, the letter reveals that many people do not regard Jesus as the Son of God, and Pilate himself, before his claimed conversion to Christianity, did not regard him as such either. The governor, when he wrote the letter, only considered Jesus to be a religious or political figure lacking any divine attribute. Apart from the question surrounding the deity of Jesus, the letter seems to question the reliability of the biblical accounts of the life and activities of Jesus. Many feel that Pilate's account might raise doubts about the biblical record's completeness and accuracy. In addition, the letter also questioned the trial of Jesus and the theme of divine providence regarding the entire proceeding. In the next scene, we'll discuss the implications of this letter for the doctrine of divine providence and how it affects the Christian faith, uncovering the secrets of Pilate's letter. According to the Bible, the birth of Jesus, his ministry, death, burial, resurrection, and ascension were all part of God's plan, which the old prophets of Israel had prophesied about. The death of Jesus was God's eternal plan to bring salvation to all of mankind. This means that God planned the whole thing and was in control of the events, including the historical setting and the individual actions of all the players, including Pontius Pilate. So, the actions of Judas Iscariot in betraying Jesus and the final condemnation at the hands of Pontius Pilate. While it might seem like God used all the players as puppets, the theology of divine providence reveals that the free will of humans was still in place. But God, in his sovereignty, which is another theological concept, worked through all these factors to accomplish his plans. Many believe that Pilate had a spiritual insight into the identity of Jesus when he tried him, which led to his eventual conversion. The evidence supporters of this claim have provided is his reluctance to condemn Jesus, even though he had no attachment of any kind to him. In fact, honoring the people's demand to crucify Jesus would have speedily brought a sort of calm to the region. In addition, the warning he received from his wife about the terrifying dream she had about Jesus might have further brought Pilate to a place of realization where he acknowledged the divine nature of Jesus. People who believe this have gone on to assert that the Roman governor could have turned the trial around and even brought the Jews to acknowledge Jesus as the Messiah they long hoped for if he revealed the insight he received. However, Pilate could not bring himself to do this because of the doctrine of divine providence and the political tension in the Judean region that the governor was assigned to keep in check. Yet when he wrote the letter to Caesar, Pilate chose to keep these revelations to himself and instead chose to describe Jesus as an ordinary religious or political figure because he didn't want to act contrary to the expectations of the emperor. But is this alleged letter authentic? Find out in the next scene. Public response and speculations to Pilate's letters. The revelation of this disturbing letter has led to several responses and speculations from different communities, not just Christians. Among Christians, there are those who consider the letters further proof of their faith in Jesus Christ. This group believes that since there is documentation attesting to the trial of Jesus by the same Pontius Pilate as recorded in the Gospels, all that the Bible says is true. Christians with this view could care less about the content of the letter that challenges the divine nature of Jesus as the Son of God and the other questions the letter raises. Their argument is that the content of Pilate was a show of political correctness, the same way he chose to be politically correct and stay on the good side of the mob. They further point out the fact that Pontius Pilate later became a Christian, which is further proof that he didn't truly believe what he wrote down. These Christians see the discovery of this letter as a major faith boost that many other believers across the world need. While a certain group is just thrilled at the revelation of this letter and how it validates their faith, some other groups have chosen to examine the letter pragmatically and logically. This approach has led them to question the authenticity of the letter and its implications. Several historians and scholars do not believe the letter to be authentic or credible, and as such, it cannot be classified as a historical document. Their reason for this conclusion is that there is no substantial evidence that supports the authenticity of the document. Therefore, they believe it is either a fabrication or forgery meant to manipulate the opinion of the public or promote a certain agenda, organization, or individual. Similar to this line of thought, other individuals, especially Christian groups, believe that the discovery and revelation of this letter is an intentional attempt aimed at undermining the Bible's credibility. They feel that the people who came up with the fake letter are trying to cause Christians and non-Christians to further doubt the authenticity of the faith and the gospel message. In fact, the early Christian scholar Eusebius categorizes the acts of Pilate as a forgery, citing the chronological inconsistencies it contains as proof that its claimed date of writing occurred before the appointment of Pilate as governor of Judea. With this shocking revelation, does it mean all the writings in the Pilate cycle are fake? The next chapter has the answer. Examining other similar writings of Pontius Pilate. To determine if other Pontius Pilate's writings about Jesus are fake or not, we'll have to examine them individually. Our focus will be on the ones purported to have been written by him, not those that describe his actions. One of the most prominent of Pilate's writings is the Anaphora Pilati, also known as the Report of Pontius Pilate. In this report, the governor describes the execution of Jesus and the aftermath of that decision. Pilate clearly recognizes the miracles of Jesus and believes them to be more powerful than what the Roman gods can perform. Despite this recognition and its inability to pin any crime on Jesus, Pilate was forced to succumb to the wishes of the Jews to crucify Jesus to quell the potential rebellion. The authorship date is unknown, and although the oldest available versions are in Greek and are from the 6th century, scholars estimate that the original text was written around the 4th or 5th century. With this, we can safely say that the report was not written by the governor, as he was long dead before the turn of the 5th century. Another existing writing, said to be a letter from Pilate to Emperor Claudius, is found in the 5th century writing called The Acts of Peter and Paul. The letter itself is reported to have been written between the 2nd century and the 5th century. The account in this letter contradicts the rumor that the body of Jesus was stolen instead of resurrected. Pilate confirms that Jesus performed several miracles while he served as governor, and the reason he handed Jesus over to the Jews was because the religious leaders convinced him that he was a sorcerer who had consistently violated Jewish laws. The account then follows the story of Matthew's Gospel, even including the story where the Jewish leaders paid the soldiers to lie that the disciples of Jesus stole his body. Pilate then reveals that the soldiers told him of the Jews' bribe, which means the resurrection was no hoax. He summarized the letter by saying he wrote to Emperor Claudius to ensure he wasn't caught in the web of lies the Jews were spurning. The authenticity of this letter has also been called into question for so many reasons. First of all, the date of writing is between the 2nd and the 5th centuries, and Pilate was dead by then. Furthermore, Pilate writing to Claudius is somewhat strange, given that the emperor started reigning in 41 AD, which is many years after the death of Jesus, and the governorship tenure of Pilate. One major reason for this mix-up might be due to the author, who wrote the letter many years after the actual event, being misinformed about the appropriate time frames of the Roman emperors. Another reason is that this particular letter was actually written to Tiberius, but the recipient was changed to suit the story of the Acts of Peter and Paul, where the letter fit into it. Looking at all of these reasons, it is clear that the letter was indeed forged. There is another short letter reported to be from Pilate to Tiberius, where the governor described Jesus as the most pious man to have ever lived. He then explained why he executed Jesus simply because he was afraid of the Jews rising up against the Roman Empire. This letter has also been proven to be fake, as it was written during the Renaissance period, even though it was in Latin. Given that all of these letters have been proven to be fake, we can categorically say that all the questions raised about the deity of Jesus as the Son of God are false, and that Jesus is indeed God and Lord. Would you like to see more videos like this? Of course you would. Go ahead and click the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss a thing.